Hello and welcome to Unprecedented TV, and this is the first of a new show, Dire Consequences, so I hope you're going to enjoy it. This show is going to be about real people voicing their stories, their issues, and we want to hear from those people. So today we are going to be talking about our council selling us off and selling our assets. And what we are finding is local authorities are being forced into a position by which they're having to sell off the family silver. This is happening up across the UK, and these are community lifelines, essentially. They are vital to our infrastructure for the elderly, the disabled, families. And the thing is, if we lose them, once they're gone, they're not coming back. So we're going to be looking at why are these things happening? Is there anything we can do about it? And today we will be actually speaking to Steve James. He is an independent community advocate, if you like, who is currently trying to fight off his local council selling off the community centre, which is vital infrastructure to his village, which serves as a youth centre. They have the men in sheds, they have clubs for the elderly. So we want to welcome Steve to the show, the very first one ever. Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
Hi, Claire. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm going to say pretty nervous. First show, very impromptu. So we'll see how it goes. It is live.
I'll be nervous just for meeting me. Trust me, it's fine.
I'm not nervous for meeting you, but no swearing. So we've got you on today to obviously highlight what is, as you are well aware, is happening up and down the UK. But it's obviously currently happening in your borough, in your community, with assets being unfortunately sold by the local council. So if you want to tell me a little bit about what you are currently trying to fight.
Okay, so I live in a little borough called London Borough of Bromley, which happens to be one of the biggest boroughs in the whole of the GLA. But I live right on the outskirts of that borough in a little village called Biggin Hill. Some people will know it as Biggin on the Bump. It's been known as all sorts of things. Its history goes back to the very early 1900s when it was a very famous RAF fighter station, and the Battle of Britain, obviously, and so forth. So we're a little bit isolated out here at on the edge of the GLA and on the edge of the borough as well. And we've got some commodities out here which are probably since before COVID, but then COVID obviously killed a lot of things, have certainly been underused and under-maintained. And now we're finding ourselves within a project of the Borough Council of having to, or not having to, that they've decided they're going to dispose of one of our assets, one of our community assets, which I understand the finances. I understand their problem. Their purse is only as big as it's going to be. They're pulling in money on council tax, but they can't make ends meet. I think every London borough is suffering with the same issues right now. I do have a few issues with what they're doing because of where we are located. It only takes a bit of severe rain and all of a sudden we have no public transport infrastructure out here at Biggin Hill. So we're very much reliant on ourselves, hence being called Biggin on the Bump. And we find ourselves now where what the council are doing is rationalising what they deem as youth services and putting it into a family service, into a building that, in my own opinion, I don't think suffices for what's going to be required. And in doing so, disposing of an asset. Now, that asset was actually given to the Cudham Parish Council, who then put it onto the Diocese of Bromley, which is it's known currently as the Spitfire Youth Centre, Spitfire Youth Club, Spitfire Youth Centre. It's not actually a youth centre anymore. It's run by youth services within the London Borough of Bromley, which is a little bit of a misnomer, really, because there's a nursery in there.
Yeah.
There are some youth services activities, but there are also what was originally known as Men in Sheds, which is some of the senior. It originally started with some of the senior males of the area going in and setting up their own workshop, repairing stuff, making garden furniture and so forth, which has been fantastic. It expanded to she sheds as well, and now becomes sheds. There's an over 60s club there. So it's become what we now call it, the Spitfire Community Hub. Okay, and that's important. We realise that that's what it is really now. It's based on the edge of the recreational ground in Biggin Hill. So no matter who uses it, you know, whether it be young children, whether it be youth sort of groups, youth services, or whether it be senior citizens, they can walk off into the park. It's a lovely location. It needs a little bit of work doing on it to renovate it. You can see one of the groups that's actually active with me is Biggin Hill Football Club. Now they play every Saturday and Sunday on the recreational ground there. That's right next to the Spitfire Community Hub. That's an important asset. So that when you actually want some open space, you can go and get some open space.
If this was to be taken away from the community, apart from obviously they want to relocate the youth centre for the teenagers and the young children to a much smaller premises, which is definitely not suitable. How far would people have to travel to find another sort of community centre with all these things available to them?
Okay, so the youth here, if they want to go down and use the family centre, and the word is down, there's two areas in Biggin Hill. There's the upper part of Biggin Hill and there's down in the valley. And as a Biggin Hill resident, you'll understand that. But for a lot of people, that doesn't make an awful lot of sense. Effectively, it's a ski jump. It's a hell of a hill to get down. It's also located right on the main road. There is no recreational ground to the side of it where you're talking about them having to go to. Otherwise, they've got to start going into Bromley or into Addington and Croydon, which is actually we're the borough of Bromley. So to go into the borough of Croydon doesn't seem right and so forth. And that could be anyone that's actually currently using the Spitfire Community Hub at this moment in time would have to do that. It isn't conducive to having people. We wanted to start a community cafe in there so that actually people would come in. We were going to do or the idea is that we are going to do, let's put it properly, let's put it positively, that we actually had some banking hubs coming in there. So every Wednesday, we'll say, maybe Barclays and Nationwide will come in. Just send one person. They'll come in, they'll sit down with people, they'll have a cup of tea. They'll invite people.
Markets. I mean, it could be used for a lot of things. It could be hired out for weddings, parties, but you can have farmers markets, obviously a food bank, as you said, banking hub, all sorts of things. Why hasn't it been used? Why do you believe it hasn't been used since COVID?
Well, we had a meaningful discussion with the council yesterday. And in fairness, Bromley Council have engaged with us. And the decision has been made and voted by councillors. So that makes it a little bit awkward because officers only have a mandate given to them by the councillors. And we asked if we could actually rent it in the interim period, and we were told no. It needs some reparations done to it. It's starting to show signs of wear and tear. There are some damaged areas, and they just believe that if they were renting it out to other people alongside these people that are using it now, that would increase the usage, therefore speed up the dilapidation process, and that's their fear and concern. So that was what we were told was why we couldn't hire it
for essentially the last 5 years. But obviously, had it been hired out, it would have obviously generated an income by which it wouldn't have gone into some state of disrepair, would it not?
Absolutely correct. You know, and the generation of income is important for that building because it has to be its own life sense, if that makes any sense to anybody, sorry. But it has to be self-sustaining. And that's what we've tried to do as a community. We've got together our what we call the Spitfire Community Group, and there's 9 of us representing the whole demography of Biggin Hill. Biggin Hill has got a population of 10,800 people. It's not a huge village, but it has a disproportionate amount of very young people, and it has quite a disproportionate number of quite senior people because of its location. We're trying to represent that community. And if I'm honest with you, that was given to us as a community. That site, as you see it now, next to the recreation ground, ours is the big building in the middle. That was given by the Douglas family back in the 1930s to the Cudham Parish Council, who then took it on to the Borough of Bromley Dyer. It was given to the community. So it seems a little bit perverse that the council can utilise that to take it away to get money.
So what you're saying is it was actually gifted to the community, but now the council have effectively taken ownership to now sell it.
They've had ownership for a while, if we look at the definition of ownership. But the spirit of the agreement was that it's there for community, for the youth, for sport, for community activities, and it was given. So there's a spirit of an agreement there that was given for that beneficial purpose to the community. And where it is located is quite central to the whole community. Whereas the other place that they're talking about, the family centre, which is down in the valley, as you know, is not as centrally located as that.
No, and as it being in the valley, quite often we all know that the buses get quite often diverted or stopped, especially if they're running late at the airport, which isn't even in the middle of Biggin Hill, up the top, as obviously local residents call it. So quite often you don't get a bus service into the valley, so therefore it's not inaccessible, and it is very built up in a residential area. It definitely wouldn't work, but I guess that the council have to be seen to be providing another accommodation. Is that the case?
That's the truth of it. Youth services are going to effectively, from what I can gather, amalgamate with family services and go down into that building down there. What we're looking at now is the front office at the side of the building. Now that graffiti art, for want of a better word, is actually the Biggin Hill logo. You'll see that further on. You'll see it on my shirt with the 3 planes taking off.
The Spitfires in there as well, so it's
exactly
in keeping with the history of the RAF.
I mean, rather strangely, Biggin Hill was always synonymous with the Spitfire, although we probably had more Hurricane squadrons than we had Spitfires. But uniquely, and you'll know this as much as I, Claire, about every half an hour on a sunny day, there's a Spitfire takes off, a 2-seater Spitfire. And we're in a beautiful position of hearing that Merlin engine and the Griffin engine that comes over now and again, bubbling away over our heads. I don't think there's another place in the country is actually as happy with that noise as we are here. That's part of our lifeblood.
So when did you find out that this was the plans to sell off this land? And what do you think, who do you think is going to be buying it? I mean, where, is it going to be going for property? Are they going to be building on it? I understand that there are TPOs on the trees there, and there was once a pond. Is that right?
Well, quite frankly, I think the council are bound by their own rules on this. And actually their rules state that it's the best offer. They have to get best value for the community they work for. So it'll be whoever puts the biggest price in, is the truth. There are some issues and some anomalies with the place in that it does have covenants on it from the people who gifted the land to Cudham Parish Council, as I said. And some of that is for youth, community work. There's a few land registry anomalies as well. If anyone is into doing the IT stuff, actually, if you look up Spitfire Youth Centre, it's in a different location. So someone's got that wrong somewhere. There are 33 tree preservation orders in there. I've heard 32, I've heard 38, but 33 is the consistent number. And when you look at, you can see the trees there just in that picture, and I've kind of circled it roughly for everybody. There's some ash, there's some chestnut, there's some other trees in there. So for anybody to make anything of that site to turn it into a developer's land, there's the TPOs have got to be got rid of, the covenants have got to be covered. Whether it would mean that someone would have to knock that Spitfire Centre down, build a few houses, and then build a new community hub, that's another opportunity for someone, and that may be what we have to do to look for to actually keep that running in our community.
So how did you find out about it then, and how much notice have you actually been sort of given on this?
Okay, so the public notice for this was from council's chambers where they voted upon it, and then there was a motion led by the Labour Party. Councillor Gill tried to actually not stop it in its tracks, but actually reverse some of the decisions. That's all that's come out. Right. As far as you can find it publicly on the London Borough of Bromley website, but there's been no public consultation, and we did ask yesterday if there was going to be.
Do you think that they've had no choice but to do this, or that it's part of a bigger agenda? Because it's not just this community centre, this particular council selling off. They've already sold off a huge plot of land, the civic centre, which was where the council was obviously housed, along with all the gardens and it's like a stately home, isn't it? Along with the Churchill Theatre. So do you think that they have no choice but to be doing this, or do you think it is part of a wider agenda?
If I'm honest with you, I personally, after engaging with several of the councillors and several of the council officers, I don't see as they've got any choice. And I've talked to them in the same way that someone else has said, selling off the family silver, because once this is gone, it's gone. There is nothing. There is no asset there that you can lean back on as get out of jail.
You've literally taken the line out of my mouth. That's exactly what I keep saying. They are selling off the family silver, and once it's gone, it's gone. That's it, Yeah. And where is all that money going as well? And what is it going to be going to? And then when that money's gone, what are they going to sell next? There's nothing left to sell, is there?
That's going to be the problem. Is they're going to look in the pantry one day, and the pantry will be bare. That is the truth of everything, and that's why what we've tried to do as a community is actually come back to the council, to engage with the council, and listen. I'm not going to knock them in any way here, because they have engaged with us and they have tried. It's very, very. They are kind of hogtied with what they're doing because of the finances, but we've tried to explore other ways that we could partner with them. Perhaps do an asset transfer, a short-term lease, where we as the community can actually kind of take the asset over, either share the profits or rent, give them the rent for the building, and actually turn a profit, and then turn that money back into the building, because it isn't being utilised. It's being managed and run by a central council who, if I'm honest with you, have got too many other spiders' webs that they're trying to keep together. So in many ways, for us as a community to run it was almost we'll do this for you almost for free. We weren't going to do it for free. We were going to employ a member of the community to actually do it for us and get that money back by putting a cafe in there, which again is pulling the people into that building. And it's all about using that building to within an inch of its life, because that's not what it's getting at the moment. And the community up here were fantastic. I know yourself, you have contacts with builders and so forth. We've had a roofing, a glazing, electrical company. They've all said, come on, if you get this for the community, we'll come and we'll do a DIY SOS for us up at Biggin Hill. That's how much it means to not just the community people that use it, but to some of the professional people up here that are prepared to give their time, their money, their skill, their knowledge, their experience to help us keep it.
And I'm guessing that this proposal and all of this has been put to the council.
Oh, it has indeed. And the council's answer is there is no wiggle room on this. It's either sold or it's a long-term lease.
And why is that? Are they giving you reasons for that?
Need the money.
They just want rid of it.
Well, it's going to cost them to renovate the building. It's going to cost them to do the other building, and they're going to use the money from in theory, they're going to use the money from the disposal of that building to change and renovate the other building. I personally think it should be the other way round. You know the area, and I'm sure you feel the same. But
I have heard that they want to extend the other building, but if you look geographically, the land that other building's on, I can't see how they could possibly extend it any further, because it's a very small plot of land that it's on, isn't it?
They can extend it a bit, but they can't take away the fact it's in the middle of a housed area, a residential area. Whereas if you look at what we've got there with the Spitfire, actually there's 5 little cottages at the back, but effectively it's only neighboured by 1, 2, 3 houses. On its rear side, it's got the recreational ground. On the front side, it's got quite an arterial route through the town, not the main road, admittedly, but that has minimal effect on everybody around it. Whereas the other one is a small building, probably not much bigger than the size of a decent sized detached house, and it's surrounded by residents. There's no pulling area, there is no car park area. I personally think it's fraught with issues, as well as being somewhat isolated in comparison to this place.
Do you feel that your proposal to the council could actually work, though, and feel that with a bit of time, and obviously the community also putting together, you mentioned about, a DIY SOS thing, on a small kind of budget, you could get this sort of up and running. It could be advertised and generate an income that could actually sort of in a way support itself, but give the council an income as well. Because there is the question really, as we just said, once they've sold off everything they own throughout the borough, because it's not just this community centre, there are, I believe, 2, maybe 3 others that in the borough that they are also selling off, along with all the other things. Once that money's gone, where are they going to get this money from? Wouldn't it be better to keep hold of these things, these assets, like the community centre, give it a chance to actually generate an income that's consistent, then they're always, getting that income coming in and something to fall back on. It doesn't make sense to me, because if you're going to be thinking about long term for the community and the people in your borough, because I always feel that's what it should be about, isn't it worth giving that a chance to see whether it would work? Because, as I said, long-term income is going to be better than selling it off, and then that money, in a very short period of time is gone.
Absolutely. That money is pennies. Whereas, if we were turning a profit there and we were sharing a profit with them, or we were paying them a rent, that's a continual income, and they still hold the asset. That's the truth of it. So, whilst you're renting me your tiara, I've still got the gold and the diamonds, right? Yeah. And that's where it comes from. I think their worry, and a major worry for them, is the state of the building. But that, and on its own, if we could indemnify that as the community and say that we will put that right, we will then look after it and maintain it. Firstly, they're still the landlord, and there still is a liability or responsibility on them, but we would indemnify them with that. That brings the community in the doors. And even someone that wouldn't be using that centre is going to be building a new roof. At that point, their children will then use the centre, because everybody's aware of it. And what's happened is, over the period of the last 5 or 10 years where it hasn't been used, that's kind of gone into the back of people's minds. So many children went to Honey's nursery, or Busy Bees as it started off. So many kids go there now.
So initially, I heard that the nursery was going to be safe. I mean, the nursery, as you said, it's been there for many, many years. Is that now not the case? Would the nursery have to go as well?
In real terms, what they've said to the nursery is, you're a sitting tenant, so you're going with that building. Okay, yeah. That's fine, unless it's a property developer or someone that actually isn't going to utilise the building for what the building was designed for, and they're just going to knock it down. Because from that moment in time, you can be a sitting tenant of wherever you want to be. But if the landlord decides no, then they give you your section notice, and off you go, off you pop.
So do you think this is a done deal then, that you think that this fight is, they've already made their decision and that's it?
They're still fighting this old dog, let me tell you. We are going to keep going at the council. They've promised us that they'll keep the door open with us. And if we can come up with some innovative ideas, if we can come up with some sponsors, if we can come up with some finances to actually try and buy the property or do something with it, then that's what we'll have to do.
So what advice would you give to other people in their local areas trying to save, you know, their community asset, whatever it may be? What advice could you give?
Firstly, they need to find them. Secondly, they need to use them, because if they're not being used, they're near as guilty and as culpable as anybody else. And I just want to go across one of the things that you said. You said about Bromley Council selling 2 or 3 off. They're actually selling, I believe, 10 or disposing of 10 assets across the borough. It's a big borough, Bromley, but 10 assets. So, you know, they are requiring the money. There's no two ways about it. However, whilst it might have had, or some of them might have had a little bit of resistance, I don't think anyone's got together in the same spirit and in the same context as us up in Biggin Hill. And we're not looking for a fight. We're looking to partner with the council. Let's make that very clear. You know, sometimes they're in a difficult position.
And it could actually work well. You know,
I believe it could work better than well, if I'm honest with you, Claire. I think we as a community up here, we're a funny bunch, because we've almost got an island mentality, because when it rains, the 320 bus turns around.
I think the nickname is Hillbillies is what it is.
Possibly, but I count the fingers every day and I've only got 5, honestly.
Well, you know what? Thanks for coming on, Steve, and talking about this. You know, it is very sad to know that a small village is going to be potentially losing really the only community centre that it has that serves, well, everybody, you know, from naught right up to, you know, elderly. But
from the cradle to the grave is what we say. Cradle to the grave.
Yeah, and as we know, this is happening all up and down the country. So thank you so much for coming on today and highlighting this issue that is going on everywhere.
Thank you for giving me time, Claire. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. So there you have it. You know, and not a lot of people may be aware of these things that are happening. And as Steve said, you need to look for them, because up and down the country, our local authorities are quietly selling off our community assets that really they probably shouldn't be allowed to do. You know, it's very sad, because they are a lifeline for all ages, you know, from the disabled, elderly, you know, the children, families. And, you know, if we can't start to fight back and try and save these assets, then really we're not going to have many left. So thank you for tuning in. This is Dire Consequences. It was the first one. I was quite nervous about it. We are going to be talking about all kinds of issues, all kinds of things, whatever it is. I want to hear from you. Anything that you feel is, you know, potentially linked to what is going on in this country and globally. You know, you've got a story to tell. I want to hear it, because here, we don't want to be censored. We want freedom of speech. We want people to be aware of what's going on. But most importantly, please stand strong, keep the faith, and keep shining the light. And hopefully I will see you again for another show.